Billy Butcher from The Boys is a walking case study in trauma, rage, and moral collapse wrapped in a sarcastic Cockney accent. So let's take a look at this, absolutely iconic character. Now, his core is his trauma and the motivation. At the center of his psychology is this grief that has been weaponized. After his wife disappears and later we find out the real truth, this becomes the nuclear core of his existence. Now, Hugh also suffers from the same type of weaponized grief on very different levels, and it manifests itself in similar ways, but also very important, ways that are different. So with Billy Butcher, he doesn't just hate supes. He needs them to be villains so he can justify this obsession he has with killing them. All of them. His entire persona is fueled by this displaced anger. Instead of processing his loss, he projects it onto all supes. His vendetta is less about justice and more about revenge therapy, and he's pretty open about that. He's addicted to this rage because it keeps him from facing the bottomless pit of grief, or as he perceives it, which could be into the healing process. And it's a control idea. He has a pathological need for control. His leadership of the boys isn't democratic. It's dominance through intimidation, charisma. He uses guilt tripping. He's the streetwise general's knack for relying on the broken. They're psychologically broken. He keeps them in line by preying on their vulnerabilities, which he knows very well. He's very masterful, and that level of manipulation that I think he uses is subtle, and it needs to be explored more, and I'll do that later. But what he aligns with is a world of the predator or the prey, and the only way to survive is to literally be more ruthless than your enemy. That's something he doesn't make any qualms about. He's said that he will do whatever it has to take. So this is why it becomes a complicated relationship with Huey, because Huey still shows his morality, something that Butcher can't help but see as a weakness, but at the same time, he envies it. He envies what Huey is able to do, to move on to his life, to have comfort in the remaining parts of his own humanity. They struggle sometimes, but they always seem to surface, and he's still able to make meaningful connections outside of, his grief over his lost girlfriend. Still mourning her and still fighting for her, but while able to have a part of him still remain human. Billy Butcher is just a perfect example of the ends justify the means psychology. He genuinely believes his brutality is necessary, even though deep down it becomes the very things he hates and why he is despised. His disgust towards supes is mirrored by his disgust towards himself and what he's done since he lost Becca. This creates this spiral. He doesn't just accept self-destruction, he kind of marches toward it with this blood-filled smirk on his face. And the eventual use of temporary V in the show highlights this. Every injection is both a grab for power and a slow suicide note, especially now when we know the long-term effects of it. Now, Butcher, he uses this crass humor, as he calls it, in one-liners. It's not just a style thing. This is armor. By mocking everyone and everything, he keeps people at distance, which is preventing intimacy from breaking through this wall of vengeance. He can't form these new attachments. Sarcasm for him just not just wit, it's an anesthetic. He's just like the ultimate modern anti-hero. He's a tragic avenger type. He's like Captain Ahab, chasing Moby Dick. It defines him. He defines himself by his enemies. Without supes, at this point, he has no identity. This makes him dangerous because victory for Butcher doesn't mean peace. That's the crazy part. It means annihilation. He is incapable of imagining a world where he can just exist or be. He can only see one where he fights, and that's where he gets really problematic in a lot of ways. So Butcher is just a cocktail of unresolved grief, his obsession, a level of self-loathing, all poured over this bed of, this, comedic, funny guy, and you get what you have in Butcher. He's both the hero you root for, and the warning sign that says "Don't come near me" or "Don't become me," and every part of it's 100% true. So a character that, I kind of feel that way about Butcher, even as I'm watching it, where I'm like, I would never trust this guy. I would tell Mother's Milk and those guys to get away from him because of this. But an interesting character. I'm glad I had an opportunity to kind of express my thoughts on him. Let me know what you think about my breakdown of Butcher or any other characters you want us to take a deeper look at.